Sarah Rogers had been a widow for exactly 47 days when she walked into the Silver Spur Saloon, wearing her husband's coat. The coat was too big. It swallowed her frame, the sleeves hanging past her fingertips, the wool scratching against her neck. But it still smelled like him, like tobacco and saddle leather, and the faint sweetness of the peppermints he always kept in his pocket. She wore it because the Montana cold was vicious in November. She wore it because she had nothing else warm enough. But mostly, she wore it because taking it off felt like burying him all over again. The saloon was loud, too loud. A piano banged out some cheerful tune that made her teeth ache. Men crowded around tables, their laughter sharp and ugly, their voices competing with the clink of glasses and the shuffle of cards. The air was thick with smoke and sweat and something else, something raw and hungry that made her skin prickle. She shouldn't be here. Respectable women didn't walk into saloons, widows especially. But respectability was a luxury she could no longer afford. Sarah pushed through the crowd, keeping her eyes down, her hands buried in the coat's deep pockets. She was looking for work. Any work. The ranch was gone, sold to cover debts she hadn't even known existed. Her late husband Thomas had been good at many things. Managing money wasn't one of them. The funeral had drained what little savings remained. She'd tried the hotel first, then the general store, then the boarding house. Every door had closed in her face with the same polite refusal. "Times are hard, Mrs. Rogers. We'll keep you in mind." She'd walked past the saloon 3 times before finally gathering the nerve to step inside. A hand caught her elbow. She jerked back, heart hammering. "Easy there." The man was older, his face weathered like old boot leather. He smiled, showing gaps where teeth used to be. "Looking for company?" "No." Her voice came out smaller than she intended. "I'm looking for the owner." That'd be Callahan, big man behind the bar. He gestured with his chin, his eyes crawling over her in a way that made her stomach turn. "But if you're looking for work, honey, you picked the right place. We always got room for a pretty thing like you upstairs." Heat flooded her face. She yanked her arm free and pushed past him, moving deeper into the saloon. Her vision blurred at the edges. This was a mistake, a terrible mistake. But she had nowhere else to go. No family, no friends in this town, just 23 cents in her pocket and the clothes on her back. The bar stretched along the back wall, dark wood scarred by years of abuse. Behind it stood a man built like a bull, his arms thick as fence posts, his mustache drooping past his chin. He was pouring whiskey for a group of ranch hands who looked like they'd been drinking since noon. Sarah waited and waited. He didn't look at her. "Excuse me." He kept pouring. "Sir, I need to speak with you." One of the ranch hands elbowed his friend. They both turned to stare at her, their grins wide and mean. "Look at that. Fresh meat. Ain't seen you before, sweetheart. You new in town?" She ignored them. "Mr. Callahan, I'm looking for work." The big man finally looked up. His eyes were small and dark, buried in folds of flesh. He studied her for a long moment, then spat into a tin cup beside the bar. "What kind of work?" "Anything. Cleaning, cooking, I can wash dishes, or I got a dishwasher. Got 2 girls upstairs handle the cleaning." He went back to his bottles, rearranging them with meaty hands. "Only work available here is entertaining the customers. You interested in that?" The ranch hands laughed. One of them slapped the bar. "I'd pay good money to be entertained by her." Sarah's face burned. She opened her mouth to respond, but the words stuck in her throat. She turned to leave, her eyes stinging, her chest tight with humiliation and rage. That's when she saw him. He sat alone at a corner table, half hidden in shadow. A single candle flickered in front of him, throwing angles of light across a face that looked like it had been carved from stone. Dark hair fell past his collar. A scar cut through his left eyebrow, pale against tanned skin. He wore black from head to toe. Black shirt, black vest, black hat resting on the table beside a half-empty bottle, but it was his eyes that stopped her cold. They were blue. Not the soft blue of summer skies, but the hard, cold blue of winter ice. And they were fixed on her with an intensity that made her breath catch. He didn't smile, didn't nod, just watched her with those unnerving eyes while he brought a glass to his lips and drank. She should look away, but she couldn't. There was something in his gaze that pinned her in place, something dark and knowing, like he could see straight through the coat, through the widow's black dress beneath, down to the hollow ache she carried in her chest. Someone jostled her from behind. The spell broke. She tore her eyes away and pushed toward the door, her heart racing, her hands shaking. The cold air hit her like a slap when she stepped outside. She sucked in a breath, leaning against the wall, trying to slow her pulse. 47 days. Thomas had been dead for 47 days, and she was already this desperate. Already willing to walk into places like that and beg for work. Already feeling the weight of strange men's eyes on her body, like hands she couldn't shake off. She straightened and started walking. She didn't know where, just away. Down the muddy street lined with false-fronted buildings that promised more than they could deliver. Past the hardware store and the assayer's office, and the little white church where she'd sat through Thomas's funeral, numb and silent, while the preacher talked about God's plan. What plan was this? What divine purpose did it serve to leave her alone and broke and so tired she could barely stand? The tears came before she could stop them, hot and angry, spilling down her cheeks as she walked faster, not wanting anyone to see. Not wanting to give this town another reason to pity or judge her. She found herself at the edge of town, where the buildings gave way to open prairie. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of blood and gold. In the distance, the mountains rose like broken teeth against the horizon, beautiful and cruel and utterly indifferent to her suffering. She stood there until the cold seeped through the coat and into her bones, until the sun disappeared and the first stars emerged, sharp and bright in the darkening sky, until she couldn't feel her fingers anymore and her legs ached from standing. Then she turned and walked back toward the boarding house where she'd rented a room she couldn't afford. One more night. She had enough for one more night. After that, she didn't know. Didn't want to think about it. The street was quieter now. Most of the shops had closed. Yellow light spilled from saloon windows and the hotel across the way. Her boots squelched in the mud, each step an effort. She was so focused on putting one foot in front of the other that she didn't hear the footsteps behind her until it was too late. A hand clamped over her mouth. An arm wrapped around her waist, jerking her backward into the narrow alley between the general store and the feed shop. She tried to scream, but the hand pressed harder, cutting off her air. Her attacker dragged her deeper into the darkness, away from the street, away from help. Terror exploded in her chest. She kicked and thrashed, but he was too strong, much too strong. His breath was hot against her ear, reeking of whiskey and rotted teeth. Thought you could just walk away, didn't you? It was the man from the saloon, the one who'd grabbed her elbow. Thought you were too good for us. Well, you ain't. You're just another. He didn't finish. Something massive slammed into them both, ripping her from his grasp. She hit the ground hard, the impact knocking the wind from her lungs. Above her, two shapes struggled in the dark, the sound of fists hitting flesh, a grunt of pain. Then a sickening crack, and one of the shapes crumpled to the mud and didn't move. Sarah scrambled backward, her back hitting the wall, her chest heaving as she tried to breathe. The remaining figure turned toward her. Tall, broad-shouldered, moving with a dangerous grace as he stepped into the thin strip of moonlight filtering between the buildings. The man from the corner table, the one with the ice-blue eyes. He stood over the unconscious attacker for a moment, his breathing steady, his fists still clenched. Then he looked at her, really looked at her, and something in his expression shifted, softened just a fraction. "You hurt?" She shook her head, not trusting her voice. He moved closer, crouching down so they were eye level. Up close, she could see the scar wasn't the only mark on him. His knuckles were scarred. His jaw bore the faint outline of an old break. This was a man who'd been broken and put back together wrong. Just like her. "Can you stand?" She nodded. He offered his hand. She stared at it for a heartbeat, then took it. His grip was warm and calloused, and surprisingly gentle as he pulled her to her feet. She swayed, her legs unsteady, and he caught her elbow to steady her. "Thank you." The words came out as a whisper. He didn't respond, just kept his hand on her elbow and guided her back toward the street, away from the man groaning in the alley behind them. They walked in silence, her mind still racing, her body still shaking with adrenaline. When they reached the boarding house, he finally released her. "You got a room here?" "Yes." "Lock your door. Don't open it for anyone." His voice was low and rough, like gravel under wagon wheels. "That man's gonna wake up mean. He finds out where you're staying. He won't." She didn't know why she said it with such certainty. Maybe because she was too tired to be scared anymore. Maybe because standing this close to a stranger who'd just saved her life felt safer than anything had in weeks. He studied her face in the dim light from the boarding house window, those blue eyes searching for something. She didn't know what. "What's your name?" "Sarah Rogers." "You're the widow, Thomas Rogers' wife." It wasn't a question. She nodded anyway. "I knew your husband. Not well. But I knew him." He took a step back, putting distance between them. He was a good man. Didn't deserve what happened to him. Fresh tears pricked her eyes. She blinked them back. "No, he didn't. Neither do you." The words hit her harder than they should have. She wrapped her arms around herself, suddenly aware of how exposed she was, how vulnerable. Standing in the street with a man whose name she didn't even know. "What's your name?" He hesitated. Then, "Cole Bridger." The name meant nothing to her, but the way he said it, like it carried weight he didn't want to bear, told her it should. "Thank you, Mr. Bridger, for what you did back there. Don't thank me yet." He picked up his hat from where it had fallen during the fight and settled it on his head. "You need work, Mrs. Rogers?" The question caught her off guard. "Yes, but I'm not. I know what you're not." His voice was firm. "I got a ranch about 5 miles north of here. Small operation. Just me and one hired hand. Could use someone to cook and keep the place from falling apart. Pays not much, but it's honest work. Room and board included." She stared at him. This had to be a trap. Men didn't offer jobs to desperate widows out of kindness. There was always a price. As if reading her thoughts, he added, "I got a spare room. Door locks from the inside. You do your work, I'll leave you alone. That's the deal." "Why would you help me?" "Because I can." He turned to go, then paused. "Think about it. Offer stands until morning. You want it? Meet me at the livery stable at sunrise. You don't show, I'll assume you found something better." He walked away before she could respond, his boots clicking against the wooden boardwalk. his figure disappearing into the shadows beyond the reach of the street lamps. Sarah stood there long after he was gone, her mind spinning. Every instinct screamed at her to refuse, to not trust him, to not put herself at the mercy of another man when she'd just barely escaped one. But as she climbed the stairs to her room and locked the door behind her, she couldn't stop thinking about his eyes. Not the coldness, but what she'd seen beneath it. Recognition. Like he understood exactly what it meant to be broken, to be desperate, to need something, anything, to make the pain stop. She lay in bed that night, still wearing Thomas's coat, and made her decision. Sarah arrived at the livery stable just as the first pale light touched the horizon. Her entire life fit into a canvas bag slung over her shoulder. 3 dresses, a hairbrush, Thomas's pocket watch, the 23 cents. Cole was already there, 2 horses saddled and waiting. He didn't ask if she'd changed her mind, just took her bag and secured it behind one of the saddles. "You ride?" "Yes." He helped her mount, his hands on her waist, brief and impersonal, then swung onto his own horse. They left town without another word. The ride north was brutal. Wind cut across the open prairie like a knife, and Sarah pulled Thomas's coat tighter, grateful for its bulk despite the memories it carried. Cole rode ahead, his back straight, his eyes constantly scanning the horizon. She studied him in the growing light, the way he moved with the horse like they were one creature, the rifle resting easy across his lap, the careful distance he maintained, always 10 feet ahead, never looking back to check on her. It told her something important. He wasn't going to coddle her. She was expected to keep up or be left behind. She kept up. The ranch appeared after an hour, tucked into a shallow valley where the wind wasn't quite so vicious. It was smaller than she'd expected. A single cabin, weathered but solid. A barn that had seen better days but still stood straight. Corrals that needed mending. Mountains rising in the distance like a wall against the world. A young man emerged from the barn, wiping his hands on his pants. 19, maybe 20. Slim build, dark hair, curious eyes that went wide when he saw her. "Jessie, this is Mrs. Rogers. She'll be doing the cooking and housekeeping." Cole dismounted, his tone making it clear the subject wasn't open for discussion. "Mrs. Rogers, Jessie handles the livestock and repairs." Jessie touched his hat brim, a flush creeping up his neck. "Ma'am." She nodded, suddenly aware of how this must look. A widow moving onto a bachelor's ranch. The gossip would be ugly. Cole led her inside. The cabin was simple. 1 main room serving as kitchen and living space, 2 doors leading to separate bedrooms. Everything was clean, but sparse. Functional. A man's space with no softness anywhere. He opened the door to the smaller bedroom. "This is yours." She stepped inside. A narrow bed, a dresser with a cracked mirror, a window with faded blue curtains that someone had hung long ago. The lock on the door was new, the brass still shiny. Cole pulled a key from his pocket and held it out. "Only one. You keep it." She took it, her fingers brushing his. He pulled back like she'd burned him. "Breakfast at 6, dinner at 7. Jessie's easy to feed. I eat whatever's put in front of me." He moved toward the door, then stopped. "You need anything from town? Make a list. Jessie goes in once a week." "Mr. Bridger." He turned. "Why are you doing this?" His jaw tightened. For a moment, she thought he wouldn't answer. Then, "Your husband once helped me fix a broken axle on my wagon. Wouldn't take payment. Said that's what neighbors do." He met her eyes. Figured I owed him. He left before she could respond. Sarah sat on the bed, the springs creaking under her weight. Through the window, she watched Cole cross the yard to the barn, his movements controlled and deliberate. Jessie said something that made him shake his head. She unpacked slowly. 3 dresses hung in the small wardrobe. The hairbrush went on the dresser. Thomas's watch she kept in her pocket, the weight of it familiar and grounding. That first dinner was silent. She'd made stew from supplies she found in the pantry, biscuits that came out harder than she'd intended. Jessie ate 3 bowls and thanked her profusely. Cole ate without comment, his eyes on his plate, his presence filling the small space in a way that made her hyper-aware of every movement she made. She cleared the dishes. He stood to help. Their hands reached for the same bowl. Time stopped. His fingers were warm against hers, calloused, strong. She looked up and found him staring at her with an intensity that made her breath catch, not with desire, with something more dangerous. Recognition. He pulled back first. "I'll chop wood." He disappeared into the night, and Sarah stood at the sink with shaking hands, listening to the steady rhythm of the axe biting into wood long after the dishes were done. Sarah woke to screaming. She bolted upright, heart slamming against her ribs, Thomas's watch falling from where she'd clutched it in her sleep. The sound came again, raw, guttural, a man's voice torn from nightmares she couldn't see. "Cole." She pressed her ear to the wall separating their rooms. Heard thrashing, broken words she couldn't make out. Then silence so sudden it was worse than the screaming. In the morning, he looked hollowed out, purple shadows under his eyes, hands wrapped around his coffee cup like it was the only solid thing in the world. She didn't ask. He didn't explain. But she started noticing things. The books on the shelf behind his chair weren't dime novels. Philosophy, poetry, a worn copy of Marcus Aurelius with notes in the margins. He read late into the night. She'd see the lamplight under his door at 2, 3 in the morning. The medals hidden in the back of the kitchen drawer when she was looking for a spare knife. Silver and tarnished. Citations she didn't read because it felt like trespassing. The way he never stood with his back to a door. Always positioned himself where he could see every entrance, every window. The scars. She glimpsed them one afternoon when he was repairing the roof, his shirt riding up as he stretched, white lines crisscrossing his back. Not from war, from something worse, something deliberate. They fell into a rhythm. She cooked. He ate. Jessie chattered to fill the silences. Cole worked from dawn until exhaustion forced him to stop. She mended his shirts and pretended not to notice the way his eyes followed her when he thought she wasn't looking. It wasn't hunger in his gaze. It was curiosity, like she was a puzzle he was trying to solve. 2 weeks in, she had to go to town for flour. Jessie offered to accompany her. She refused. She wasn't helpless. The mistake became clear the moment she walked into the general store. Conversation stopped. 3 women clustered near the fabric bolts turned to stare. Mrs. Albright from the boarding house whispered something behind her hand. The shopkeeper's smile was tight and commercial. "Mrs. Rogers, surprising to see you. I need supplies." "Of course." He gathered her items with movements just slow enough to be insulting. "Heard you're staying out at the Bridger place." "I work there." "I'm sure you do." Mrs. Albright's voice was sugar over poison. "Must be hard work, keeping house for a man like that. All alone. No proper supervision." The implication hung in the air like smoke. Sarah paid without responding and left with her head high and her hands shaking. She made it to her horse before the tears came, not because the words hurt, but because they were true in a way these women could never understand. She was alone with Cole, and every day the walls between them felt thinner. She found him in the barn when she returned, mucking stalls. He looked up, saw her face, and set down the pitchfork. What happened? Nothing. Sarah. Her name and his voice did something to her, made the tears come faster. He didn't move closer, just stood there, solid and patient, until she could breathe again. They think I'm your whore. They're idiots. Are they? The question hung between them, heavy, dangerous. His jaw worked. Yes. But that night, Thomas felt like a stranger's memory, a life that belonged to someone else. And when she lay in bed listening to Cole move through the cabin, she didn't think about her dead husband. She thought about the man on the other side of the wall, and how badly she wanted him to keep screaming so she'd have an excuse to go to him. The sky turned green 3 days later. Jesse saw it first, swore under his breath, and rode hard for town. Cole watched him go, then turned to Sarah with an expression she'd learned to read. Trouble. Storm's coming. Bad one. We need to secure everything now. They worked in frantic silence, shuttering windows, moving firewood inside, bringing the horses into the barn. The wind picked up, howling across the valley like something alive and angry. By the time they finished, the first snow was falling. Not gentle flakes. Hard, vicious pellets that stung exposed skin. They barely made it inside before the world disappeared. The blizzard hit like a fist. Wind screamed around the cabin, finding every crack, every weakness. Snow piled against the windows until the light turned gray and strange. The temperature dropped so fast, Sarah could see her breath inside. Cole fed the fire. She made coffee. They sat across from each other at the small table, the storm raging outside, the cabin suddenly feeling like the last solid thing in the universe. Jesse won't make it back tonight, Cole said. I know. The words sat between them. Alone. They were alone. Hours crawled past. She tried to read, couldn't focus. He cleaned his rifle with methodical precision. The silence stretched, but it wasn't comfortable anymore. It was charged, electric. Every movement felt amplified. Tell me about him, Cole said suddenly. Thomas. She looked up, surprised. He'd never asked before. He was kind, gentle. He laughed easily. The words felt hollow, like describing a character in a book. We were going to build something, a real ranch, a family. You loved him. Yes. But even as she said it, she wondered. Had she loved Thomas? Or had she loved the idea of him? The promise of safety and partnership in a hard world. What about you? She asked. Catherine. His hand stilled on the rifle. She was everything I wasn't. Soft, patient. She saw good in people I would have shot. He set the gun aside. She wrote me letters. Every week. I still have them. Never answered enough of them. The war? And what I did before the war. His eyes met hers. I was a marshal, not the kind that keeps the peace. The kind they sent when peaceful wasn't an option anymore. How many? Does it matter? No. And she meant it. Whatever he'd done, whoever he'd been, it didn't change what she saw now. A man trying to survive his own history, just like her. The fire crackled. Wind rattled the shutters. The cabin grew colder despite the flames. By midnight, she was shivering under every blanket she owned. Her room was an icebox. The small stove couldn't compete with the cold seeping through the walls. A knock on her door. Sarah, your room's freezing. Take mine. I'm fine. You're not. I can hear your teeth chattering through the wall. She opened the door. He stood there in shirt sleeves, his hair loose around his shoulders, concern written across his face. I won't take your room. Then we'll trade off. You take it tonight. Cole! She stopped him with a hand on his chest. His heart thundered under her palm. Just come inside. It's too cold for this. His eyes darkened. That's not a good idea. I don't care. He didn't move. The tension between them was a living thing now. Dangerous. Inevitable. I should go, he said. But he didn't. He stayed in the doorway. Close enough to touch. Far enough to escape. Sarah's hand was still on his chest, feeling the wild rhythm of his heart. The cabin creaked under the storm's assault. The single candle on her dresser threw shadows that made his face all angles and darkness. If I come in, he said quietly, I'm not sleeping on the floor. I know. Sarah. Her name was a warning, a question, a plea. You don't want this. You're cold and scared and don't tell me what I want. Her voice shook, but not from cold. I'm so tired of people telling me what I should feel, how I should grieve, how long I should wait before I'm allowed to be something other than Thomas Rogers' widow. His jaw clenched. This isn't about him. No, it's about me. About the fact that I've been numb for 3 months and standing here with you is the first time I've felt anything. She stepped closer, close enough to smell leather and smoke on his skin. I don't want gentle. I don't want careful. I need… What? What do you need? The question broke something in her. All the walls she'd built, all the control she'd maintained, shattered like ice. Make me forget, she whispered. Her hands fisted in his shirt. Even if it's just tonight, make me forget that I'm alone, that I'm broke, that everyone looks at me like I'm cursed. I need this. Her voice cracked. I need to feel something that isn't grief. He searched her face, looking for doubt, for hesitation. She gave him none. If we do this, everything changes. Everything already changed. His control snapped. She saw it happen, saw the moment he stopped fighting himself. His hand came up, fingers threading through her hair, tilting her face up to his. Are you certain? Yes. He kissed her. Not gentle, not careful, desperate and hungry and raw. She gasped against his mouth, and he swallowed the sound, backing her toward the bed, his hands everywhere, mapping her through layers of fabric. She pulled at his shirt. He broke the kiss long enough to yank it over his head. Her hands found the scars on his back, and he flinched. Don't, she said. Don't hide from me. Something in his eyes went soft, vulnerable. He lifted her like she weighed nothing and carried her the last few steps to the bed. She wrapped her arms around his neck, holding on, afraid if she let go, this moment would shatter like everything else good in her life. He laid her down. The candlelight caught the planes of his chest. The old wounds, the evidence of violence, survived. He was beautiful and broken, and she understood him in a way she'd never understood Thomas. Last chance, he said. She pulled him down to her. The candle burned low. The storm raged. And for the first time since Thomas died, Sarah Rogers felt alive. When she woke, dawn was bleeding through the shutters. She was tangled in sheets that smelled like him. Her body ached in unfamiliar ways. She should feel guilty, should feel shame. She felt nothing but satisfied. Cole stood by the window, already dressed, watching the storm break. He turned when she stirred. Are you all right? The question was careful, guarded, like he expected her to regret everything. She sat up, pulling the blanket around herself. Yes. Relief flickered across his face, then concern. Sarah, last night. Don't. She cut him off. "Don't apologize. Don't tell me it was a mistake." "I wasn't going to." They stared at each other. The morning light was harsh and honest. There was no hiding now, no pretending this hadn't happened. She should say something. Thank him, maybe, or tell him how she felt. But the words stuck in her throat, because how did she explain that he'd given her something she didn't know she'd lost? Permission to want. Permission to live. "I should check on the horses," he said finally. He left. She stayed in his bed, Thomas's watch heavy in her pocket, and wondered what the hell she'd just done. Sarah rebuilt the walls in daylight. She dressed in her own room, served breakfast without meeting his eyes, called him Mr. Bridger instead of Cole. The formality was a knife between them, and she wielded it deliberately. He didn't push, just watched her with those ice-blue eyes that saw too much. The hurt was there, carefully hidden, but she caught it in the tightness around his mouth, the way his hands gripped his coffee cup. Jesse returned that afternoon, snow-covered and chattering about the storm. He looked between them, sensing something had shifted, but was smart enough not to ask. Sarah threw herself into work, scrubbed floors that didn't need scrubbing, mended clothes that weren't torn, anything to keep her hands busy and her mind from circling back to how Cole's skin had felt under her fingers, how he'd whispered her name like a prayer. The guilt was eating her alive. 3 months. Thomas had been dead 3 months, and she'd already climbed into another man's bed. What kind of wife did that? What kind of woman? She caught Cole watching her from across the yard, turned away before he could see her expression. But her body betrayed her, remembered, wanted. 2 days of silence stretched between them like a chasm. Then the rider came, a man from town, hat pulled low, eyes nervous. He wouldn't dismount. Just sat his horse and delivered his message to Cole while Sarah stood in the doorway, dread pooling in her stomach. "Sheriff's coming. That man from the alley, he's pressing charges, says Mrs. Rogers stole from him." Sarah's blood turned to ice. "That's a lie. Don't matter if it's true. He's got friends. Sheriff Palmer owes him money." The rider shifted in his saddle. "Thought you should know." Cole's face went blank, the expression of a man calculating violence. "When?" "Tomorrow, maybe. Day after." The rider left. Cole stood motionless in the yard, staring at nothing. Then he turned to her. "Pack your things." "What?" "We're leaving. Tonight. I know people in Colorado. They'll—" "No." She stepped off the porch. "I'm not running." "Sarah, you don't understand. Your word against his? A widow with no money against a man with connections? They'll lock you up or worse." "I didn't do anything wrong." "Doesn't matter." His voice was hard, urgent. "Justice isn't about truth. It's about power, and you have none. Then I'll get power. I'll fight this." "With what?" He grabbed her shoulders. "You think they'll listen to you? You're alone. I'm not alone." She shoved him back. "I have you, don't I?" The question hung between them, raw, desperate. His hands dropped. "That's what this is about. Last night. You think I'll—" "No." The word came out sharp. "This isn't about that. This is about me being tired of running, tired of being afraid, tired of letting men decide what happens to my life. Noble, also stupid. Maybe, but it's my choice." Jesse cleared his throat from the barn. "I could ride to town, see what I can find out." Cole's jaw worked. Finally, he nodded. "Go. Be careful." Jesse left at a gallop. Silence fell. Sarah and Cole stood 10 feet apart, the distance between them loaded with everything unsaid. "Why did you pull away?" he asked quietly. Because I shouldn't want you. The confession tore out of her. Thomas has been dead 3 months, and I already forgot what his touch felt like. What does that make me? Human. It makes me a traitor. No. He closed the distance, didn't touch her, just stood close enough that she could feel his warmth. It makes you alive, and being alive isn't a betrayal. It's survival. Her eyes burned. I begged you, Cole. I begged you to make me forget. And you did. And now I'm terrified because I don't want to remember. Then don't. I have to. He was my husband. I owed him. You don't owe dead men anything. His voice was rough. Trust me. I've tried. Doesn't work. She looked up at him, saw her own guilt reflected back, her own fear. What if this destroys us? What if it saves us? Jesse returned at dusk, his horse lathered and blowing hard. Charges are dropped. He swung down, breathless. Man woke up remembering who put him in the dirt. Decided his memory was faulty after all. Relief flooded Sarah's chest. Then she saw Jesse's face. There was more. What else? Silas Croft bought your old ranch. Paid cash. He's been asking about you, Mrs. Rogers. Saying you owe him. Something about a debt Thomas made before he died. The ground tilted under her feet. Thomas never borrowed from Croft. Croft's got papers that say different, and he's making noise about collecting. One way or another. Cole's expression went cold and distant. The look of a man making calculations she couldn't follow. He walked into the cabin without a word. When he emerged, he was wearing his gun belt. The revolver sat low on his hip, tied down. Professional. Cole, no. Stay here. Keep the doors locked. He moved toward his horse. She grabbed his arm. Don't do this. Please, I can't lose someone else. He turned, his hand coming up to cup her face. The gesture was tender. Final. You won't. You don't know that. Men who go looking for fights. I'm not looking for a fight. I'm ending one. He kissed her forehead. I'll be back before midnight. He rode out before she could stop him. Sarah stood in the yard, watching him disappear into the twilight, her heart trying to claw its way out of her chest. Jesse touched her shoulder. He'll be all right, ma'am. I've seen him handle worse. Have you seen him handle Silas Croft and whoever he's hired? Jesse's silence was answer enough. An hour passed. Then 2. Sarah paced the cabin like a caged animal. Every creak of the walls was a gunshot. Every gust of wind was a death rattle. Then, distant, but unmistakable. Gunfire. 3 shots. A pause. 2 more. She didn't think. Just ran for the barn, threw a saddle on Daisy, and rode. The town was chaos when she arrived. People crowded the street outside the saloon. Lamplight spilled through the doorway. She shoved through the crowd, her heart in her throat. Inside, Silas Croft lay on the floor, clutching his shoulder, blood seeping between his fingers. 2 of his men were down, not dead, disarmed. Cole stood in the center of the room, his gun still drawn, his eyes sweeping the space for threats. He saw her. His expression flickered. Relief. Then anger. I told you to stay at the ranch. And I told you I'm done being told what to do. She crossed to him, not caring who was watching. Is it finished? It's finished. He holstered his weapon, then pulled a folded paper from his coat. Croft's debt was forged. I found the real documents at the land office. Thomas never owed him anything. He held it out to her. Your ranch is still yours. Legally. Croft was planning to force you into selling it to him for nothing. She stared at the deed. Her name. Thomas's name. Proof that something of her old life still belonged to her. But she didn't want it. Sell it, she said. Cole's eyebrows rose. Sarah, sell it. Use the money to fix up your ranch. Our ranch. She met his eyes. If you'll have me. Not as hired help, as a partner. The room had gone silent, every person watching, waiting. Cole's face softened, that rare, genuine smile that transformed him completely. I'll have you any way you'll stay. She kissed him, right there, in front of everyone. Let them talk. Let them judge. She didn't care anymore. When they finally pulled apart, Cole kept his arm around her waist, possessive, protective. We should go home. Home. The words settled into her chest like warmth after cold. They rode back under stars so bright they looked close enough to touch. Jesse had left a lamp burning in the window. The cabin glowed like a beacon. Sarah dismounted and stood looking at it. Not Thomas's dream. Not the life she'd planned. But hers. Built from ashes. And grief. And the unexpected grace of a man who understood that survival sometimes meant letting go. Cole came up behind her, his arms wrapping around her waist, his chin resting on her shoulder. No regrets? Only one, she said. That I didn't ride into that saloon 3 months ago, instead of waiting so long to start living again. He turned her in his arms, kissed her slow and deep and full of promise. Inside, the fire was waiting. The coffee was hot. The world was still hard and cold and unforgiving. But they had each other, and sometimes that was enough. If Sarah's journey made you feel something, do me a favor. Click the like button and subscribe to this channel. I've got another story that will make you believe in second chances tomorrow. Trust me, you won't want to miss it. Also, tell us in the comments where you are watching from and what time is it right now. We love connecting with our global community. See you tomorrow.